Welcome to the Motivated Martial Arts Podcast. Your hosts, Jackson White and Gavin Cook, have been friends and Taekwondo training partners for over 40 years. This podcast will bring you a mixture of their life stories, martial arts, and business experiences to motivate you in life and throughout your martial arts journey. Adding in a mixture of inspiring interviews and some of the best traditional martial artists around today. So over to your hosts, the Motivated Martial Artists.
Welcome to the Motivated Martial Artists podcast with me, Gavin Cook.
Me, Jackson White.
And this evening, we've got Brannon Beliso on the show, all the way from the US. Super excited to have Brannon. I've been trying to pin him down for a while. So this gentleman has got his fingers in lots and lots and lots of different pies. We're super excited to speak to him today and understand his background, how he got into martial arts and what he's been doing from there on, I suppose. So thanks for coming on the show, Brannon.
Absolutely, gentlemen. I'm very grateful, Gavin, Jackson, to be hanging out with you guys on a Sunday here. So it's very cool to spend
Sunday
this time
morning
with you and share.
Sunday morning for you.
Sunday morning, indeed. As we're just getting to the twilight, which is great.
Yeah,
so
it's 6 o'clock there, right? It's about 6 o'clock.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Cool.
So I'm going to kick off with the first question then, Brannon. So just give us our listeners a bit of a feel for you, where you grew up, what was your background, schooling, and how that led you into martial arts.
Cool. I was born in 1962, so I'm 59 years old. I started in martial arts at the age of 5 years old under my father. My father's owned a martial arts school in San Francisco for well over 50 years now, in the same location. My father's a smart man, owns the building, so he's cultivating. He's that standard small business owner. He owns the building. The martial arts school is on the bottom, and then above him, he lives in the middle, and above him, he has foreign exchange students.
Okay.
So he's making money left and right, and the building's paid off.
Yeah,
it was a $30,000 building that's worth millions now, from the time that he bought it. So I started martial arts in 1967. So I was training at a time kids did not train. My introduction to the martial arts was I was allowed to sit in the corner in Seizon. No crayons, no books, in Seizon, in silence, for the first 3 months, 2 hours a night, 3-4 nights a week, to prove to the adults I wouldn't be disruptive. And then after that, I was allowed to train. Yeah, I was allowed to train. And so with that, at the time, that first school was in the basement of a flat that we were renting. So martial arts back then were clubs. People trained because it was an art form. People fought because fighting was just part of what came with it. There wasn't any of what we witness today. So even at a young age, I never saw martial arts as a business because nobody made money back then. Nobody. Ed Parker was starting to make money with, teaching Elvis. Then Bruce Lee came along. So I witnessed all of that. I watched Ed Parker. I watched Bruce Lee come in. I saw Bruce Lee on TV shows. I saw Bruce Lee's first movie, which was called Fist of Fury or The Big Boss in Chinatown in San Francisco. And we would all get together. What's unique about this, you'll love this, Gavin and Jackson. One of my instructors, Grandmaster Ralph Castro, God rest his soul, trained together with Bruce Lee. They cultivated concepts together. And if you Google it, it's there. Bruce Lee actually moved back from Seattle because he wanted to work with Ralph Castro because they were cultivating some very unique things at that time in concepts and training. And then he opened his schools in Oakland, which is just right across the bay here from San Francisco. So I have a very deep, deep heritage of martial arts. Very, very deep. And I've been very blessed to be able to train old school, but also understand the progression of martial arts. So I never opened martial arts as a business. I was a musician. I had a record deal with Warner Brothers in my 20s. I toured through Asia, had a top 10 album, 3 top 10 hits, a #1 song for 6 months in the Philippines. I owned a DJ company for about 15 years.
Can we get a song at the end?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I should have brought my guitar. And so I did that, and that was one of my business. But my big one was I cut my teeth growing up in small businesses. My grandmother owned coffee shops, and there were little bitty things in the Tenderloin district of San Francisco. But what my grandma taught me at a very early age was to serve people at a very high level. There was this guy who used to come into my grandma's restaurant. He'd sit at the end of the counter, and he was a World War II veteran. And you could tell he had post-traumatic stress syndrome. He'd sit there in silence. And every time he came in, he got a plain hamburger, nothing on it, and a bottle of Coke. And he'd eat and leave. And I'd go to my grandma, why don't you charge him for money? And in her deep, deep Filipino accent, because my grandmother was Filipino, she would say, never mind. And so what she taught me was whether people could pay or not, service is not based upon that. Yeah. Now, people get me wrong. They say, well, how can you say that? No, I understand the value of money, having grown up very poor with very little, as a child. So I understand what money does. But money is simply a tool. It's a vehicle. It doesn't define who we are. And if anybody bases their self-worth on what kind of car they drive or how many zeros at the end of their bank account, I would probably encourage them to go back and reassess where they are. Cool. Mm-hmm. So then the 70s, I fought for 20 years.
Sorry, Brannon, can I interject there?
Yeah,
I just want to go back and just explore a little bit about those early days, because Gavin and I, we picked up martial arts in the late 70s or mid 70s. A lot of our guests picked it up in the late 60s, but you were already thriving there. So just talk us around your martial arts school. What was the atmosphere? What was the vibe like in there? How was the training? Because I can imagine it was quite different to what we see today.
Oh, absolutely. It was that blood and guts era. That stuff you see, those films that pop out, no gloves, no groin cup, no mouthpiece. Whoever showed up on the first night, if you didn't break 3 of their ribs, then they worth their salt. And if they came back the next day, they got to train with you. And I was a child amongst all of that, training with adults. So I got beat up on a regular basis. And that's just what martial arts was. There was never really the life skills or any of that. Now, remember, it was a very tough time, right? When Ed Parker and Ralph Castro came over from Hawaii, the level of prejudice here in the late 50s was phenomenal. And my father, the same thing, being a minority coming from a third world country. So they fought. They fought. When Ed Parker and Ralph Castro were in Hawaii, all the U.S. sailors occupying their bars, trying to take their women. So the locals fought. So that's when the art really got separated. We understood there was art and then there was reality, right? So art, you might go block, block, punch. Reality, you're going to check, and throw a jab, right? So we knew the difference, but we understand the value of art. It teaches focus, form, technique, discipline. Without art, then you're just a street fighter. So they really saw the difference, but they also drew upon the value of street fighting. So I got to watch people like Chuck Norris fight my instructor, Rick Alamany. I saw Benny Urquades fight John Natividad, which was a really famous fight. I went to LA, I got a trophy. Ed Parker handed me my first place trophy at Long Beach Internationals. When I did my black belt test in 1979, back then you had to have witnesses to verify, to vouch for you. Kind of like, freaking mafia. Hey, this guy vouched for you. And so at my black belt test was Grandmaster Ernie Reyes. Everybody knows Ernie Reyes, right? Ernie Reyes Sr., right? He's very well known. We had George Chung, who's another well-known martial artist back in the day. And then we had a supervisor. A politician was there. So if anybody ever says, is Beliso legit? Yeah. And they can verify my black belt. They were at my black belt testing. You can call up Ernie Reyes Sr. right now and ask him, is this boy legit? And he'll say, oh, yeah, I was there. I was physically there. So that's the way it was back then. And then coming through that, I witnessed that whole thing, Karate Kid, right? Kung Fu, the series was just, nobody liked it because they stole it from Bruce Lee. And, Bruce Lee was gone and we were all bummed out because all these Bruce Lee wannabe movies. Remember all those Bruce Lee movies and all these guys who look like Bruce Lee a little bit? Yeah. We wanted Bruce Lee so badly, right? And he was dead and gone. Yeah, I remember in 1973, I think it was, I'm at the internationals and I was a young kid and we didn't have social media, cell phones, personal computers. None of that existed. And I remember they're playing in a booth, a clip of Enter the Dragon. And they were telling Bruce Lee died. And I cried. I sat there and cried because he was my hero. That's how much. And every time I work with my instructor before he passed away, we'd do a check. I say, did Bruce Lee touch you right there on your arm? Did you guys ever right there? Is that one? Or is that one? But here's a cool story, gentlemen. The back fist Bruce Lee throws. That's not Jeet Kune Do. That's Kenpo.
Okay.
It's Kenpo. Look it up. There's a whole story about that where Bruce Lee was training with Ralph Castro. And he said, well, show me your what are you noted for? What makes you guys rock? And he threw a back fist, supposedly. You could look it up. And I always say supposedly because, people can write anything, that Bruce Lee couldn't block. That he couldn't block at that time. So Bruce Lee wanted to learn that technique. And we know Bruce Lee was a sponge. And that's what's always inspired me. Yeah, I'm a consummate learner, gentlemen. I love learning. I love to learn. So you saw Bruce Lee, whether it's fencing, savate, boxing, grappling, he didn't care.
He took the best of everything, didn't he? He wanted to, bring together the best of everything.
Yeah, absolutely, Jackson. And I think that's what helps us today. So that was my early, and I was so blessed because I stood there and watched somebody like Wally J training side by side with Willie Cahill, training side by side with a guy named Richard Kim or Biggie Kim, which was a Japanese stylist. And all of them would congregate at the YMCAs, and nobody had ego. Nobody gave a shit, because if you wanted to get ego, you just stepped outside in the alley, you beat the shit out of each other, and you actually came back in, then you'd go dissect it together. And, then eat food. It's like, okay, you just beat the crap out of each other. Now you're both sitting there having a beer, talking about why this guy kicked your ass.
Yeah.
How did that define you, do you think, as a young man, or as a child moving into a young adult?
Well, Jackson,
looking back, because at the time, I'm sure you didn't think anything of it. It's the norm, isn't it? But now, looking where society is now, and having looked back, how do you think that defined you?
Well, I think what it taught me is to be a consummate learner. Learn to learn. See, people are so concerned about appearing smart. So all the misinformation, they can cultivate that, run through a garage with a Bentley behind you, past the jacuzzi with, big tit blonde sitting in it. They think that's what defines someone who's worth something. They're intelligent. What I learned back then was you just learn to learn. That's it. Yeah. I mean, you shut up and dance. Anybody can talk a mean game. You just shut up and dance. Let's see. Right. And so there was that. The men were men in a different way now. And when I grew up, it was sensei and sifu. So that was very simple. I don't know, at some point, then we had master, then we had grandmaster, then we had super great grandmaster and the grandmaster of the grandmaster. And I said, what are we, a rap group or the KKK? What is it here? And I'm serious, gentlemen, we never had that growing up. And the lines were all blurred because everybody was devoted to art. Because nobody was making money, right? People were devoted to art, to the art of it. And so that's what I got, Jackson. That's the biggest thing I got out of that time, was you should always be a martial artist first. As Dave Kovar would say, you're a martial arts instructor second, and you're a business person third. If you're going to run a successful martial arts school, I believe that mindset is something that should be very prominent. Because if your product sucks, who cares how much you charge? Who cares what kind of salesmanship, Facebook marketing, and all that? If your product sucks, eventually people will know. If I want to put a bad restaurant out of business, give them good marketing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny though, isn't it? Because obviously when we look back to when we were kids, I think most adults think that they were the glory days. Our time was the best. And my dad used to say to me, it was great when I was growing up. They were the good times. And his dad said to him, when I was growing up, they were the good times. Absolutely. And when you actually think back, we look at now and think, oh, they were the good times, but actually, really, were they? Were they the good times, or have our generation now got it better? Who knows? I suppose time will tell.
Well, I think with that, because we were children, we had no responsibility, and kids are pretty resilient. I spent the first 4 years in a foster home because my parents were all jacked up. And then when they got us back, my mom left my dad for his best friend. And we were, my dad was a single father raising 4 kids, working all day and running a martial arts school. It was tough, but kids are resilient. We just figure it out and we move on. And that's what makes it so magical, is we didn't have the same type of responsibility nor weighed down by the mindset that accompanies adulthood. So that's what I think is the gift of being a child. We forget easily. We can put it behind us. We're pretty resilient. And that's what makes that times for any of us, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, so magical, right?
Yeah. No, definitely. So when did you start getting into becoming an instructor? Or prior to becoming an instructor, did you get on the fight circuit? How did that progression go? Well, you moved into your teens, into your adulthood.
Yeah, thank you. My daddy's school is a fighting school. So I trained 6 days a week, 4 hours a day, tournaments every other weekend. $5 to enter tournament. Again, no mouthpiece, no groin cup, no gloves.
Yeah. Well, we were there. We like I say, we picked up in the 70s.
Yeah, so no doctors. There was this guy named Al Novak, who was an old kung fu stylist. He would come to every tournament with a fishing tackle box. And that was the doctor and first aid and everything. Yeah, so it was trippy.
He'd run onto the square and an injured man would jump up.
Yeah. So what really happened was it was organic. We lived above the martial arts school. And at 10 years old, I was teaching. It's what you were supposed to do in a family business, whether you're grabbing a broom in a coffee shop or in this case, helping teach the kids classes. There wasn't, you're going to be an instructor. There was no instructor's training program or anything. You just got on the floor and taught. And then at the time, right around 13 or so, my father was going to the Philippines a lot because he was looking for a wife. And because he had been married here 3 times, 4 times, he didn't trust American women. And that's just a fact. So he was trying to get, a wife from the Philippines. So he was going back there 6 months at a time, and leaving my sisters and I. My oldest sister was 16. I think I was about maybe 13, right in there. We were running this business 6 months at a time while he was gone. So I learned at a very early age, but I already had cut my teeth in my grandmother's restaurants. I knew if you just serve people well and treat them right, they're going to pay you money. And I truly believe that. So I've been teaching since I was 10 years old. And I was fighting at the same time. I fought all the way up until I was 18, and then it was just nothing left there. There was no money. I remember I fought one PKA, but it wasn't PKA ranked. It was a local thing. And I got paid $200. Just as we were transitioning out of point fighting. Remember PKA? Remember PKA? Right? That was the first thing. That was the first real full contact. And I remember in the fight, which I won by decision, I got kicked so hard in my face, my feet hurt instantly. Right? You guys, right? We know those kind of hits, right?
Yeah.
We know those kind of hits.
Yeah, we've all taken them. We've all taken them.
Yeah. And to this day, I have TMJ. I have TMJ, and I wear a night guard at night because I still clench my teeth from all the trauma, and my jaw's misaligned. That's all. I have floaters in my left eye because I'm a lefty, right? And I'm short. I'm only 5'3". So when I throw that left cross, 99% of the time they're coming over the top, popping me in the left eye. I can't, right? You can only put your hand so many places. And so I've been cut in this eye. And I remember going to the doctor, and I was 46 at the time. Yeah, because I'm 59. And it was size 16 did this. And I walked into his elbow. Size 16 shoe. Well, stupid. But, when we grew up, there were no weight classes, right?
Correct. You turn up lightweight and heavyweight, and you just count 20 kids. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're lightweight. The rest of you are heavyweight. And you've got to help the kids in the middle.
Yep. And that's the way it was. But in my dad's school, we fought everybody. So it never changed. And I'm sitting there getting stitched up, and I don't know who was with me. I think it was, my wife, who I've been married to for 14 years. She goes, when are you going to stop? And I said, what do you mean, when am I going to stop? She goes, when are you going to stop doing this? I said, what do you mean? Fighting. When are you going to stop fighting? You're 46 years old. When are you going to stop fighting? I said, I don't understand the question, because to me it's so foreign. I've been fighting since I was in a foster home at 11 months old. Yeah. I was fighting, since I was 5, 6 years old in martial arts classes with men hitting me. Back then those men didn't care because they thought they were toughening you up. So they'll happily stick a heel right into your gut, and then let you pick yourself up off the ground. And I realized that if I hurt somebody in my school, I look bad. If they hurt me, I look bad. So that's when I stopped. Because of the floaters, because it's the first precursor for a detached retina, right? To detach retina. Yeah. Because of the misaligned jaw, I feel like I'm on an airplane taking off or landing all the time. You know what that's like when you're trying to pop your ears? Yeah. To this day, it's now it's that way. Yeah, so I'm always trying to pop my ears. And I've gotten to everything, MRIs, CAT scans, every doctor, they say, your jaw is like this. It goes off to the right because I've been hit so many times on the left side. So I stopped at 46, and it made a lot of sense. Yeah, because you guys know. I mean,
maybe what you should have done, Brannon, is start back at 46, but just change your stance.
Well, yeah, I've changed it. Believe me. I mean, you learn the economy of movement, right? I get that. Everybody attacks linear. So, if he's got a strong right cross, I'm going to step to his right side. So he's got to come across the midline of his body to throw that right cross, right? If he's throwing a right cross at me and I move to the left, he's going to get me. So I understand all that. But you know that if you're not ready to get hit, you don't fight.
Yeah.
Don't fight.
True, very true.
Yeah, it was the detached retina thing, Jackson, that really changed everything. It changed everything, because I don't want to go blind.
Right, no, of course, and it's a sensible decision. So through your career, I suppose, because you mentioned already at the age of 5 you were working with your grandmother's shop, then you were teaching from 10 martial arts. So where did that go into your early adult years?
Absolutely. I got a girl pregnant when I was 16 years old, and my dad was pissed off, so he kicked me out of the house. And I get it, right? It's your shit. You got to go deal with it. But fortunately, the girl I got pregnant, we had met together on a film. We did it. We were doing some martial arts film together, actually. And I was enamored. I was 15 at the time. She was 18. I was like, oh, wow, look at this, and I got her pregnant. So we moved to Los Angeles, south of LA, in a place called San Bernardino. And her parents gave me money to open a school. And that was my first school. The School of Chinese Kenpo Karate. I was 19 years old. It lasted all of 9 months because every night was fight night. I was still a martial artist, not an instructor, a good instructor yet. So every night was fight night. And at that time, and even though Bruce Lee was dead and gone, 1980, 81, everybody thought if they put on a wife beater and some black pants with the kung fu shoes, instantly they were Bruce Lee. So it's just field day. And every night I'm just kicking the shit out of anyone who walks through the door. It was ego. I was young. I was stupid. So that school died in 9 months. And what culminated with that was, I remember this guy walked through the door one night, and you could look up him. His name's Rich Callahan. I think he's a Kenpo guy. And he said to me, well, I can't wear gloves tonight because I burned my arms working on my motorcycle. And me, stupid as I was at that time, I said, okay, cool, fine. Let's go. And boom, he popped me with a back fist, cut me, and I didn't have the money, right, for the doctor. And it was just a bad day. And after that, her and I broke up, and I came back. But that was my first real venture into running a martial arts school. And I failed miserably because it was ego driven.
Yeah.
And,
so what did you learn from that then, Brannon?
Well, I think what I learned from that is if you want to be a martial artist and be a fighter, be that, right? If you want to be a great instructor, be that. And I didn't have a very clear why other than to feed my fragile ego at the time. So I didn't know what my purpose was in the world. What was my why? Why am I here? What's going to be my contribution? How am I going to make a difference? How am I going to impact this world? I wasn't clear on that. And I was still chasing women at that time, and I was fighting all the time. Two very bad combinations. I'm glad I didn't drink or anything.
I was going to say,
I'm glad I didn't drink.
Two of the things you could throw into the mix there, drink and drugs.
Well, we can't fight all the time. We can't fight all the time. So I promptly moved back home. My dad, ironically, we made up, and my dad brought me back because he needed a teacher in his school. So it was a win-win. It was just such a win-win. So I got my own apartment, and I start teaching again for my father. And that's, by then, in the 80s, we saw Karate Kid, right? So the contracts, the upgrades, the black belt clubs, all that. My dad said, no freaking way, ever. He says, that has nothing to do with martial arts. You're this used car salesman. He says, when you associate a martial arts school with a used car salesman, you have to be doing something wrong in that business. When they say you nickel and dime people and you own a martial arts school, you've got to be doing something wrong. You've got to be. But then I also saw the yin to the yang. You had these guys, slick salesmen, selling franchises with black belts, right? That were blowing through town, like Fred Villari was one of them. They blew through town. But then on the other side, all of us artists were suffering for our art, working a day job, having a little club at night, still running it the same way we did in the 60s, and just beating the shit out of each other, and then going to some high school gym on the weekend to be glorified because you have some crappy day job where you walk around a gym at a tournament on a Saturday, and everyone goes, yeah, hey, Master so-and-so, and everyone's bowing to you, right? Then you work all day for free judging, and they give you a plate of food. I'm going, there's something.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
Yeah.
Right. If you're lucky. And then whoever brought the most students and spent the most money, well, there was nepotism and they got favored. So that's when tournaments changed for me tremendously. And that's when I completely withdrew from tournaments and decided that's not, the direction I want to go in at all.
So how did you you're obviously you're a martial arts businessman at the moment. So you keep the art, I'm sure, true to the outside.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, as the world has changed and society has changed, you've had to, I suppose, businessize your love. So how did you do that, and how did you manage to, or have you managed to bring that into your father's schools?
Well, I never could, because it was always the ego thing. I remember my father was gone for 6 months during one stretch in there. And he came back and a 4-year-old didn't bow to him. And he was real pissed off. And he said, you know, you don't teach these kids respect. I said, Dad, this is a new student. He doesn't know who you are. And he's freaking 4. You know, but that, and so I always saw that we always butt heads. We always butt heads about that because, you know, I'm my father's son. He wants to do things his way, and I want to prove to him that my way is better. So we went about that for on, and I haven't spoken to my father in maybe 25, 30 years now. We just completely had to separate. But I'm going to tell you why that's not a bad thing, because it wasn't my choice. It was his choice. He decided he didn't want to have a relationship with myself or my sisters. So it's not only me. But what it taught me was to become whole as a person. So fundamentally what happened in there was a little gap. I owned a DJ business and I'd worked for a guy briefly, weddings, company parties, high school gigs, clubs, everything. So during that stretch, this guy taught me what it was to serve people, another level. So this guy, Jerry Nowoski, again, someone who's passed away, but he also taught me the customer is number one. And he really delved that. So then I went off and opened my own DJ company. I sold that when I signed a record deal with Warner Brothers. I was in the Philippines touring, very decadent lifestyle. You know, at the height of it, I had a #1 song, a 6-bedroom house. I was living with 2 women, very, very bad. I was just very extreme. And it looked good for you know, maybe a movie or something, but personally in my soul I was being depleted. So I left all of that, came back. Taibo was big. I had been a DJ. I'm a martial artist. I'm an entertainer. So Taibo looked good to me. So I created my own version of Taibo 1, the next level in cardio kickboxing. There's still a VHS tape running around Amazon, and I started teaching in all the health clubs and in like 4 or 5 martial arts schools, all collectively. And that was what, the year 2000 almost. Right? Okay. The year 2000. And so I got into a big fight with my instructor, Rick Alamany. No, it wasn't a fight. It was very simple. A lawyer sat me down and said, you own none of the programs here. You can stay on as an instructor. Because back then, you know, this guy's like my dad. It's a handshake. Right. Yeah. And I took his school from being in the red into the black within 3 months. We were both making $5,000 each a month, which, you know, maybe wasn't a lot at the time, but it worked. It worked. So 4 of my friends, kid you not, kickboxing student, this, collectively invested $40,000. And I, you know, filled it out. I'm going to buy you guys out within 3 years. We'll do K1, you know, the K1 statements. You'll get profit every year. And I opened a school with $40,000. Stupid. But in hindsight, it's very smart. So in the first couple of years, I tried to run it the way I did my dad's school. And I went, no. You've learned all this stuff. Right? You can't do that. So once I started writing systems, once I went to rotating curriculum, once I got rid of everything to pay the rent, I had a Qigong guy, an Aikido guy. We had all these people to make rent. I even had an esthetician in a back room giving massages and facials, whatever it took to pay rent, right? To pay rent. But once I began to really research the why, everybody, have you seen the Simon Sinek piece, The Golden Circle, one of the most watched YouTube TED Talk videos? Watch it. Everybody lives from the what. What are we? A martial arts school. How do we do it? Quality martial arts instruction. But nobody ever lives from the why. And my why is simple. I help people, teams, businesses, startups, and companies live their best life. So whether that's writing a system, whether that's working on leadership skills, whether that's cultivating your brand, whether all that is what I do. And people say, well, then, you know.
I think the why, you know, when you go, Sorry, Josh. When you go back to the why, if you haven't got that why, then when you finally make it and when you finally reach that dream or whatever, if you haven't got that why, what's next? And I think, and when you look at some of the most successful people or some of the, you know, the oldest veterans and all these people, they've always got something to live for. They've always got a reason to keep going, haven't they? And if you haven't got that, if you're just driven by the pound notes, when you finally get those pound notes, you're going to think, actually, this is pretty shit.
Well, we know there's so many really unhappy, wealthy people sticking guns in their mouth, married 9 times, drug addicts. So we understand money's just a tool. But see, I grew up, money was evil. What do you think? Money grows on tree? What do you think? I'm made of money? You know, I wore my dad's suit to my high school graduation. That's how little money we have. My father couldn't even buy me a suit to wear at my high school graduation. But so the big turning point, you know, from 2000 to 2007, I broke my first million in 2007. because I had this number growing up poor. I thought being a millionaire was a big deal, right? A millionaire. So I wanted a school with $1 million a year gross with a 35% net.
Yeah.
Right. That was it. That was my end all be all. So once I moved into rotating curriculum writing systems, what I still lacked was a why. I still wasn't clear on that. And once I defined that, live your best life, the clarity's there. I don't move unless it fulfills my purpose. Even when I'm cleaning a toilet, which we've done during this pandemic because I had to lay off my janitors because it was smart business. It was smart business. I clean that toilet to live my best life because I don't want anyone to go in there and pee in that toilet and it's dirty. So even that, if you live from a why, good economy, bad economy, every study has proven, if you read Good to Great by Jim Collins, good economy, bad economy, no matter what the climate is, the companies that continue to do this are the purpose-driven companies. So that's why I tell people, stop studying anybody in the martial arts. The business models are flawed. They're very geared towards the individual, right? And we should really start looking outside. So I study Apple. I study Zappos. I study cultures. I'm very big on that. Lululemon is another one. I like studying cultures and whys. And if you watch The Second Coming of Steve Jobs, right? They kicked him out of his own damn company. Could you believe that? How can you kick somebody out of their own damn company? But what it did for Steve Jobs, which was that's what people miss, those lost years when he started that software company. What was it called? Next or something? I don't remember offhand. But he sat there going, you know what we lack? Culture. You know what we lack? Why? I want people that think like me, act like me, believe like me. So when he came back to Apple, The Second Coming, who did he bring with him? Guy Kawasaki. Ever hear of Guy Kawasaki?
No.
Look him up. Look him up, Jackson and Gavin, because Guy Kawasaki was the chief evangelist officer.
Okay.
Right? So they actually coined that phrase. And every Fortune 500 company has that evangelist. He professes the why of the business. What is Apple? Think different. What is Nike? Just do it.
Yeah.
Right? So Nike's another model I study a lot.
Okay. So you're studying a lot of these. So how do you apply them? You mentioned the customer service and the why. How do you apply that, and how do you drive that message and culture down into your own employees?
Absolutely. So live your best life, not mine, not someone else's. When a school owner says to me, well, the parent needs to understand, I look at him, I say, check your ego. The parent doesn't need to understand. It is your job to understand. Because if you can understand how your demographic thinks, eats, plays, behaves, guess what? Writing a social media post is easy. Cultivating a website and content is easy. But if you're going to write content from your hypothesis of what everybody should think and believe in, you're going to be in bad shape. Now, we can't serve. We can't serve everybody. I get that too. But there's a great book I just finished called Ranges, where they talk about it being that generalist is really the future. You need to be a solver, a critical thinker. And they use Tiger Woods as an example. Very one-dimensional from the age of 2. All he did was play golf, play golf, play golf. Great golfer, but he didn't have the skill set to drive a car. He doesn't have the skill set to, have healthy relationships with women. And he's proven that. That's nothing new. That's data that's out there, right? So being a generalist, you as a small business owner, you better be good with customer service. You better be good with social media. You better be good with writing content. You better be good with leadership. You better be good with team building. You better be good with writing systems. So all of that is important. But if you don't have a why, then you're a dog chasing his tail. And you run through consultant after consultant, association after association, program after program. And we've all done that. Gone to an event, bought some program, got back to our school and going, why the hell did I buy that? And you never implement it, right?
Yeah, we see it all the time, don't we, Gavin?
Yeah.
Right. Or you're a great note taker.
Yeah, and
thousands of pages of notes, and you do nothing with it.
Yeah. And the way we like to look at that is, imagine there's two analogies. You've got do you have one-man bands in the US? One-man bands, the guy that sits on the street corner who's got he's got a drum. He's playing the drums. He's got a harmonica somewhere. And he's got a guitar strapped to his knee or whatever, and he's just making this din. He's making this like real loud racket on the corner. It's one man trying to do everything by himself, right? Mm-hmm. And then you've got the orchestra, where you've got a conductor who's sitting there in the middle and they've got someone playing, someone playing over there. They've got 50 people they're managing. As a school owner, you need to be that conductor, don't you?
Well,
you need to be the one.
But I think you need to be both. I think you need to be both. You know why? Can you say Mike Tyson? Can you say, Johnny Depp? Look at how many of these artists, professional athletes, lose all their money because they know nothing about numbers.
Correct.
I don't even have to look at my bank
Yeah.
account. And I can tell you how much money I have in the bank, how much money I have in investments. I know, because if I can't stand toe-to-toe with my lawyer or my accountant or my financial advisor or my bookkeeper, I'm done.
Yeah, no,
so
you need to know.
Right. You need to know enough of that, though, Gavin. So, yeah, you need to be the one-man band, and you need to be the orchestra leader as well. I get that. That's why I outsource. I outsource to a lawyer, an accountant, a financial. I have 3 financial people. So Peter watches Paul and Paul watches Mary. And so we're all on the same page. I get that. I understand that. But that's the problem, is you got that one guy trying to do everything and he's a dog chasing his tail. Or you got the guy outsourcing everything, getting screwed left and right. And he don't even know it till he wakes up in old age and he has no money. So I think it needs to be a balance.
You've got to have that balance of it. Know enough.
Yeah.
And then bring in the experts to help you in the areas you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you're failing, it's your own damn fault. I'm tired of instructors telling me, well, I'm a great martial artist on the mat and teaching. I don't want to deal with that. Okay, great. Then your failure is your own. If you know that's the problem, you lack business, then, go take an online business course. If what you lack is social media skills and you're tired of farming it out to group after group after group after group, then learn. I know for a fact I'm probably one of the only martial arts schools that has a full-time social media person that works only for me and a full-time web designer. Now, I have other verticals, so I need them for that work as well. But I saw that early on in the game. As social media started to transition, Facebook is dominating all the ad spend in the world. Commercials are less, print is less. I'm going, this is the future, without a doubt. And if you don't understand how to write content, how to look at the insights of a Facebook ad and do a split test and all the rest, you're screwed. You're going to be farming it out to every new guru coming along. And we know who they are. You'll see their commercial. They got the library behind them, and the one book is facing the camera. Have you seen those guys? The Russell Bronson book. It's facing the camera. So I'm an expert on social media marketing, right? Have you seen those people?
Yeah, all the time. It's
Yeah.
funny because that's what we've recognized quite early. Actually, we need a social media guy. We can do it. It's time consuming, but actually we bring someone on and they do it. The guy we have, he'll be editing this podcast in about 30 minutes to get it out tonight.
But please, I tell school owners, I tell them all the time, Jackson and Gavin, don't farm that out to some goddamn high school kid in your school who does TikTok videos. Please don't do that because you're lazy. You have to learn it because you're the storyteller, Gavin. You're the storyteller, Jackson. Nobody can tell the story of your business better than you. But you have to be willing to start writing. I wasn't a good writer. I don't even have a college degree. But what happened was I saw early in the game that being a great storyteller was going to be imperative to my business. Imperative. So what did I do? I submitted an article to MA Success magazine. I wanted John Corcoran to teach me, and he's another one who's passed away. But he was, the editor of Black Belt magazine. Then John Corcoran ran MA Success for Century for, many years. And I went to John and I submitted an article. And for 9 features, I said, what's the hardest thing to do here? Write a feature. Okay, great. I want to write features. And I wrote 9 feature articles for MA Success. And I remember that conversation, one of my last conversations with John, because I got to speak to him on a regular basis because I was writing for them. He said, you're now a black belt, go write a book. So if you look at Amazon, I have a book, Live, Learn, Grow, Lessons of a Reluctant Tiger. So I wrote a book, and then John passed away shortly thereafter. But see, I'm in a position now where I can cultivate content, and content is king. Look at Facebook. People pay Facebook a lot of money because they have data. They mine data, and data is just simply based upon the content that people post. Your spending habits, your behaviors, where you eat, all of that is just content, and it's mined into data. So we're doing the same thing. So you need to be, I believe that's really important, that we, as the owner, as the visionary, as the leader, can do that.
Most definitely. And that's something that Gavin and I, we've got to upskill ourselves on that over the last couple of years, haven't we, Gavin?
Yeah, definitely, and that's partly why like we mentioned off air that we're looking at. We've moved into the business acquisition And again, it's purely just so we can bring in different streams. So then we've got our social media people, and like what you said, we can use them for one business, and then we can use them for the next business and the next business, and then you can pay them a little bit from each pot. And next, you've got your full-time social media guy.
Yep, and that's just imperative because see, and if I wasn't well versed, I couldn't talk to a marketing guy and say, "You're full of shit." I remember the last guy, because we tried to partner with a lot of good people. And this guy, his first meeting, he's got all the books behind him and the Russell Bronson. I told him, take that shit down. You think that impresses me? I want to know what you believe in. I want to know why. And none of these companies will ever ask you, well, what's your why? What makes you special? What is it? They simply give you content written with emojis, stock photos, and they tell you that we're the experts. It tests really well. It's bullshit. Because if I watch this Matrix,
it's easy, isn't it? It's easy to do.
Well, it is, because it's cookie cutter across the plate. And I tell people that's why I have a full-time web designer. Is that everybody has these template-driven websites. I, as the consumer, can't differentiate school A from school B. I can't, because they have the same template-driven website, even the same stock photos, the same copy, right? Other than the address being different than the name of the school and maybe the color. Nothing's different on the website. So I, as the consumer, base my buying decision upon two things: who's cheaper and who's closer to my house. Yeah. Because I have nothing to differentiate school A from school B. Imagine going to a girl and saying, I date you because you're a cheap date and you live close to me. That's a bad day.
Yeah.
That's a bad day.
Get that all the time.
Well, that's why, Gavin and Jackson, we invest so much into that. And if you look at an Apple, you look at a Zappos, you look at a Microsoft, a Google, a Tesla, on and on. They spend millions and millions of dollars of cultivating that tribe, cultivating that why, cultivating a culture. And that's one of the reasons why we're running 600 people virtually a year later, because we have a culture that drank the Kool-Aid and believe in what we do. I mean, it's that simple.
I mean, I've been watching a lot of your videos, Brannon. I remember seeing you right back at the beginning of the pandemic, transitioning. I saw a lot of your Facebook posts when you was like, this is it. We've got to close. We're moving over to Zoom, etc. I mean, you've smashed the Zoom side. So, what sort of advice would you give to martial artists who are still, they're still going for that stage and they're thinking about coming out the other end now?
Well, let's talk data. We all know Gracie University online, right? Mm-hmm. $6 million a year. $6 million a year. Done day. The challenge is, the first thing I would tell every martial arts school owner, please stop discussing whether people learn better in person or virtually. It's not even an issue. See, again, living from our why, live your best life. That's our purpose. I don't care if it's in a driveway, on a rooftop, in a parking lot, which we're teaching in a parking lot right now, or virtually. It's irrelevant. We're here to fulfill a purpose, and it's just a different medium. But if you're going to go do it right, look at my background. I'm sitting in one of our studios right now, and look at it. It's on point, right? It's on point. Proper sound, proper lighting, proper visuals, right? Right down to my color scheme. Black, white, and red's my thing. I mean, there's no doubt. Brannon has a brand. My brand's up in the corner. All of that, right? All of that. I could very easily rolled out of bed, gentlemen, and sat myself in front of a white wall because I have a small studio at home. No. You never get a second chance to make a first impression. So, you either do it right or go home. And so many people are still reaching out. Well, you can't spar online. You can't do practical application. I said, and that's not even a discussion. Live your best life. How can I engage and connect people virtually? If we had not done that, I would be bankrupt in both of these businesses, without a doubt. Both of these schools, no doubt in my mind. We would be bankrupt at this point with these two businesses, for sure. Yep.
And that's, again, there's your why, isn't it? Your why as well is to keep servicing your customers and keep your doors open, right?
Absolutely. And again, like my papa and grandma taught me, there's nothing above you. There's nothing below you, right? I make no qualms. I'm a millionaire. Everybody knows that. I had to keep tax returns on my computer for a while at the freaking Super Show because people said, you're full of shit. You are full of shit. There's no way without contracts, upgrades, belt testing fees, built-in retail sales, you could be making that money. I said, well, great. Here's my tax return. Why would I want to pay our government that much money? because I wanted to share with people that don't listen to me, don't listen to anybody. Figure it out for yourself. That's the beauty of life. If you wanted to listen to someone else, why would you own a small business to begin with? But educate yourself. Wherever I lack, I learn.
Yeah.
And someone asked me, who are your mentors? I did an interview the other day. I said, my mentors are everybody. They go, well, what do you mean? How can you have so many masters? Because number one, I have no master. Knock it off. We're all equals. I put my pants on one leg at a time like you, and my shit stinks, just like yours. We're all in this thing together. We're all in life together. So I have no problem sitting there at 7:30 yesterday in this parking lot with a leaf blower blowing out the leaves. And people say, well, why do you do that? Because I want to, even though it's a parking lot, I want to make it the best experience. So I'll blow out the leaves. I'll push it with a broom because I want to, right? Or I could just show up because, oh, man, I got to teach in this freaking parking lot. All right, blah, blah, blah. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So again, that sense of humility that's really important is why we're still standing at this point. 200 people outdoors, 600 virtually, times that an average of $160 a student, right? Because the high end is 209, the low end is 169. So figure that, do the math. Not a bad day, right?
It is.
Not a bad day. And as I shared with you guys, we've got about $300,000 in government, programs and stuff, and all of it has been forgiven up to this point. And that's more money than most schools make in a year.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah.
Brilliant.
So, Brannon, you're a motivated man. You're motivated on the why, which is great. What's motivating you today, Brannon? Everyone goes through a different stage of motivation in their life. But I'm really at this period of your life, what motivates you?
At 59 years old, I have more years behind me than I do in front of me. Right? I mean, that's the honest truth.
Yeah.
I think what motivates. Yeah. Right? I'm not going to live another 59 years. I don't think so. But I think what motivates me today, and I took a stance on that. I posted a video maybe 3 months ago, and I just basically called out the industry. I said, you know what? 99% of our business is small school owners. And here, especially in America, the small business, you guys feel that too. Small business is what created, our countries and drive them. Yet they're suffering the most. And even pre-pandemic, 99% of the business is small business owners. If what we offer you as consultants, if what we're giving you is really, really good, why is it that the 1%, and I sit in that 1%, in this country, and as a small martial arts school owner, I sit in that 1%. Why is it that the information we're giving them isn't working? You can't tell me it's all them and they don't listen and they don't follow what we say. So I called everybody out. And it begins with the structure. We go to these different events and we speak for free. And the guise is you're going to get more clients, right? You're going to get more consulting clients. One has nothing to do with the other. I pay for a booth. I rent this freaking booth, right? If I'm going to bring knowledge and information that's going to help people, you should pay me. And you know when I learned that? When I walked into Facebook and got paid big. When I walked into Microsoft, got paid big. When I walked into Lululemon, I got paid. I'm going, why is it that they pay us and the martial arts industry does it? That's it in a nutshell, gentlemen. It's ass backwards because the allegory, the 1% in our industry that's making the majority of the money, guess what? They're fat cats. They own real estate. They sit in a glass house. I don't know when's the last time they put on a uniform, right? And they sit there and hypothesize, and they're lazy. So they take from the 80s and put a new bow on it, and this young green school owner thinks it's some brand new, information, and it's not. You guys have to admit that because you probably mine a lot of data too. Don't you believe the majority, other than social media? Tell me what's new and innovative in our industry.
Silence says it all.
The one thing that and you'll have noticed it as well with with social media now, the way it's getting, year on year on year, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now you've got Clubhouse, right? Are you on Clubhouse?
Yes.
Have you ventured into Clubhouse?
Yes.
Everybody you meet apparently is a millionaire and a guru and an expert in their industry. It's almost like, you ask these young kids what they aspire to be, and they want to be, I want to be an influencer. I want to be this, but they're 17-year-old kids that have not got any experience in anything. And it seems
but I get it.
Everybody,
Gavin,
Just
Gavin, but you watch a YouTube video and you watch this kid crapping, shitting on a Lamborghini, painting it with a paintbrush, or saying, "Hey, I'll give you $10,000 if you sit in this Ferris wheel. Whoever sits on the Ferris wheel the longest." So that instant gratification, and that's very poor. To be an influencer, I think I've spent over 50 years in this industry. I've been at actively consulting for 10 years. I've actively been owning schools successfully for 20 years. I think that's data. And if you're not smart enough to mine that data before you call me up, it's your own damn fault. So I hear you, Gavin. I hear you on that. I truly, truly do, sir. I do. But I'm willing to step up. Now, I've pissed off a lot of people in the process because I'm not going to wear a suit and go like this, with the bleached white teeth and the fake tan and the Rolex watch and the, $6,000 suit going, "Yes, I am a consultant for the martial arts industry." I'm not going to do that.
But it's important. It's important to be disruptive, though. Every industry needs to be disruptive. You need to have disruptors in every industry, and it's important because that's how change happens. And that's how growth happens, right?
Yeah, but it's not glorious on the bottom end, sir, because you're dealing with school owners that are very uneducated, very green. They have a lot to learn. But when you're able to take a school owner that knows nothing and cultivate a brand and create a why and core values and a purpose statement and write systems and move their curriculum into rotating curriculum, and you teach them to build a culture and you give them contemporary leadership, right? And how to train their team systematically. It's a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day.
Yeah.
Okay, Brannon, we're almost hitting our time limit now, so I'm gonna fire.
Well, maybe it'll just be a 2-part series. Take it and spice it up into 2 shows, right? That's it.
Well, maybe we'll
keep
just
rolling.
Book you on in another month or so. I think that'll be better. So, obviously you're an experienced individual now, and you've got a great vision. You've got a great why, and that why is driving you. You can see that in just the way you talk, in your enthusiasm, your mannerisms, the way you put yourself across. What advice would you give to a younger self, Brannon? 18, 19-year-old, what advice would you give?
Jackson, I want you to scratch that question completely from your repertoire. How many times people have asked me that question? Is that disruptive, Jackson?
It's not disruptive, but I want to know what advice you would give to your son or your younger brother.
Muhammad Ali said it so well. If I behave at 50 the way I did when I was 20, I've learned nothing. I would never want to stop my 19-year-old guy who is chasing women, playing in rock bands, kicking ass on people, just learning life, getting dirty, messing up, breaking hearts, getting my heart broken. I filed bankruptcy at 25. All of it is what got me to where I am today. I would do not, if anything, I look back at my 19-year-old guy going, "Man, that was some pretty cool times, man. Everything was easy. I wasn't making money, but I was just learning and growing and falling down. And I would never want to stifle that 19-year-old kid."
Right. Do you know what I'm hearing? Do you know what I'm hearing there, Brannon?
What?
I'm hearing, don't be afraid to fail.
Oh, I fail every day.
Of course,
I'm a one-legged man. You've seen my post, Gavin. I'm going, "Well, we tried this, and I've got a whole wall of equipment I've wasted thousands of dollars on. 1 minute we're open, next minute we're closed. All bets are off." That's what I'm trying to share with people. In this brave new world, everything we thought about business is gone, completely gone. And I said to my team from day one, Jackson, Gavin, I said, "We are no longer the same business." The minute we were shut on March 16, 2020, they looked at me and said, "What? We can't do indoor classes. We can't do birthday parties. We can't do after school. We can't do our annual tournament. We can't do summer camps. We are a brand new business, and that business is going to be an online company." Boom, done day. And look where we are today, right? Lululemon went from a brick and mortar store to increasing their revenue virtually, on online sales by 150%. Chipotle, which is a Mexican restaurant, fast food, they went from being brick and mortar to a digital restaurant, takeout and delivery only. See, so that ability to pivot that's why please don't listen to what's being said. These guys in the industry, they have real estate investments, they have money saved. They're just waiting this thing out.
Yeah.
So, seriously,
what do you think?
I wouldn't listen to any of them.
So, what do you think the world's going to look like then, from the martial arts perspective, in sort of 6 months to a year? What do how do you sort of see the changes coming?
Well, we know it's different. If you're in Texas or Florida, they've been wide open since last May. So, I believe what it's going to look like for us, for us in 6 months, we're going to have several vertical streams. First one is virtual, because there's people that's their comfort level. We're going to have outdoor. I think that's sustainable. And as long as we can get permits and places to run outdoors, we will. And the third one will be indoors, which is going to take a long time to cultivate here in California because of the mindset of people.
Sure.
And then from those three platforms, we will continue to cultivate camps slowly. Summer camps are starting to book up a little bit. But you know what, Gavin and Jackson, we're evaluating that. I want to make the most money per hour possible. We do that best teaching. And I can pay these guys top dollar if all they do is teach. Not drive a van to pick up kids from school, not run some freaking dodgeball, in a summer camp. So what would that look like, gentlemen? 1 p.m. here, 3 o'clock in New York. We're doing a kids beginner class where this guy's teaching 8 hours. Our private lessons have quadrupled in revenue. Why spend 40 minutes driving to my school when you can just get online and do your 30-minute private? So our private lessons have quadrupled. So we want to put more into that. So what is that going to look like in 6 months? I believe for us, we're going to capitalize on that virtual market because most martial arts schools, the minute they're out of the woods, they're going back to in-person only because you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Yeah. So if they make it that far and they're not one of the 35 to 50% of the schools that are closed, they'll go back to strictly indoors. Me, I'm going to keep mining that. And I'm going to take all the virtual market in New York, Chicago, Seattle. We have people in Florida, Germany, Canada training with us right now. I'm going to keep mining that because I think there's a lot of money there. And people keep saying, well, it doesn't translate. Martial arts can't translate online. It's not live. I'll say it to you, and this was taught to me by one of my friends, a VC capitalist. Can you say porn?
Exactly.
Right, Jackson? Right, Gavin? The porn industry saw that when the internet became big. They said, oh, wow, we can connect and engage. Here we go, porn. So I know that's pretty crude, but isn't that a fact? That's a billion dollar industry. Yeah, we can do it if you're committed to it. You can really take that. And when everybody drops off the face of virtual, we're going to be in a position to take it all.
Very good. Interesting. And it's interesting because that's the way we're thinking along those lines ourselves, brother.
Good. Well,
with our own platforms.
Yeah. And like minds think alike. You guys don't look like you're suffering. It looks like you figured it out. You have multiple revenue streams. I'm sure you cut your expenses right away. You're capitalizing whatever government grants are out there. So you're doing everything you're supposed to. Well, that's smart. Instead of sitting there crying into a cup of beer going, poor me, the government sucks, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that victim mindset, it needs to stop, especially for us small business people. We got to knock it off. Knock it off.
Unfortunately, that just seems to be the state of our society these days. It's inbuilt, isn't it?
It is that sense of entitlement and victim. And hey, you would think by all standards, we have it the worst in California, right? The most strict shutdown. We've only been open for 3 weeks for indoor classes in a year. Why are we in the position we're in? Here. It all begins here and it ends here. And I'm always cultivating my mindset. I invest heavily into managing my mindset so I don't live from a victim mindset, which I think is counterproductive.
Spot on.
Well, the thing is, if you're going to take credit for the good stuff, you've also got to take credit for the bad stuff, right? In the day, it's exactly what you know. Everything is down to you, isn't it? If you control everything, if you believe that you can control everything in your life, the good stuff and the bad stuff, at least you can get out there and try and fix it, right?
Oh, yeah. And again, it's mindset. I'll end with this quick story. I was having a bad day because we're coming up on 1 year, right? And I'm going, shit, I went from working 2 hours a week in these two schools, 2 hours a week if I wanted to. I was coaching my son's basketball team. I'm freaking, getting fat, just living that life. Now I work 40, 50 hours a week. And I was sitting there, I'm going, shit, but I'm down, $500,000, right? And then I say, okay, but stop for a minute. I sat with one of my financial guys at lunch. He says, let's stop for a minute. Your investments, and I won't tell you what they're equaling, but what I'm going to make for my investments, I'm done. I'm secure. I can retire right now. But I won't because I don't want to. I don't need to. 2, he said, you're still open. Stop to think about that.
Yeah.
Right? Is your cup half full or is it half empty? I have a well I can draw from consistently. And then we got the PPP for San Francisco, $117,000. And that's going to be forgivable. I know it will, just like the first one was. So then that fell in my lap. Right. Then we lost our permits for the park because the youth sports takes over. Then we got another venue to take over outdoor. See, so I was climbing on a pity pot, just going, poor me, because I'm working like a dog. I've dropped 30 pounds, well, 25 at this point, but it's all here. And if you can do that, then working through these challenges are not going to be as difficult. And when I laid the land out and looked at all my numbers, I'm in pretty good shape. See, what he said is you may have lost 500,000, but you made $1.6 million last year. Chill out. Yeah. Right? That's not even my personal investments. So he's right. He's right. Okay, and it's all how you want to look at it. It's all how you want to look at it.
It is. You got to be a half full guy, especially in this. This type of
not even. I'm not even a half full guy. I have a well over here, Jackson, that I can draw from and just keep filling it up. The law of abundance, right? The law of attraction. I live by that. I live by the law of abundance, the law of attraction. I do, and that makes a huge difference. You can't attract positive wealth into your space physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially if you're an asshole.
Agreed.
You can't.
Yeah.
And we had a discussion about that. There was one really big person in our industry in the past decade that made phenomenal wealth, and they're pretty much gone now, aren't they? Right? Mm-hmm. So something to think about.
Okay. Brannon, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on this evening. It's been a real insight.
Thank you, gentlemen.
For me personally as well, and I'm sure for Gavin, very motivational and very inspiring.
The word that I would use, Brannon, is exhausting.
Yeah.
Your energy, mate. I mean, it's great. I mean, it's great to have people on that've got so much energy, and it's great. And I think it's infectious. When you meet people that have got the sort of energy that you've got, it is infectious, and it makes you think, actually, shit, I need to be doing more.
You need to put your energy levels back up, Mr. Cook.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think it's more. It's doing the right things for you, whatever that might be, gentlemen, whatever that is. Yeah. We've all done 14-hour days and looked around and go, I got nothing done today, right? So I think it's about being mindful that you're valuable, that your time is valuable, and what you invested in is valuable. And if, again, that why, live your best life. I'm not going to sit in front of the TV eating, junk food all day. That's not living my best life. I will take my daughter to the beach, right? And I've told my other companies, it'll happen the way it's supposed to happen. Don't give me deadlines. Because right now, like in that scene of Enter the Dragon, the British intelligence guy is talking to Bruce Lee. He goes, it's Lao's time. Then he walks over here and, kick me. And that's important. So I think that's the big part. I know when to play. I know when to sleep. I know when to, all that is managed really well. And everything will happen. You see, it's not the destination. It is the journey. Yeah. And if I believe, because I'm here, and I'll leave you with this, okay? I'm right here. My goal is to get there. Okay? Now, once I get there, where am I?
Yeah, you need to keep moving forward. It's progress.
I'm right
progress,
here.
Right?
I'm right here. It's just a different here. I was here, and you hear that? That's what causes people so much pain, gentlemen. I'm not where I want to be yet. I'm not where I want to be yet. We've all said that. We've all heard that, right? I'm not there yet. How defeating is that? Talk about degrading yourself, putting yourself down. I'm not where I want to be yet. I'm not there yet, right? So, okay, I get there. I'm still here. It's just a different here. Yeah. So learn, and we hear that. Learn to live in the here and now and live it completely. And that's where this energy comes from. The only place I want to be right now, the only place I'm living, the only place I'm being is with you. And once we're done, I'm going to go to the beach with my daughter. And that's the difference. If I'm going, I got to go to the beach with my daughter. I got to go to the beach with my daughter. I'm not going to serve you guys. I'm not going to give you what I'm here to do, which is to be the example of living your best life. I'm not going to do that. All right.
Brilliant. Spot on. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much, Brannon.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah. And listen, enjoy the beach, right? I
will.
I wish we could go to the beach, but it's 7:15 and it's dark and it's cold.
It's about 2 degrees Celsius.
Well, maybe take a 30-minute break and just regroup, because those aha moments I'm sure we've shared, I know I have. I'm going to look into the storage business. That might be a new thing. But
yeah.
Right? I mean, those I take notes. People compliment me. They go, you go to these conventions that I'm speaking at. I don't just show up to speak. You'll find me in all the rooms, sitting right in the front, taking notes.
And people absorbing.
And people trip on that. I have notes here, mental notes, and I'm going to go back now and, before I go to the beach, and go, what did Gavin and Jackson teach me today? What did we discover together? That's the beautiful part. What did we discover together and cultivate? That's what disruptors do. We come together with ideas, we play, then we look at the ideas and go, what has some legs here? What fits my why? What fits my value? What can I take that Jackson and Gavin taught me? And what can I take that we learned together and apply it to my why and turn that into fulfilling my purpose of living your best life? And that's my process. That's my process. Because if I'm just here to give you information, what a waste of time. To teach something is to learn it twice. So if I'm not coming here as a student, then it's just fulfilling my ego, and I won't serve anybody well.
Brilliant. Love it. Great advice.
Okay. Thank you very much again, Brannon.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Taking the time out with us.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
I hope you all enjoyed this week's episode of the Motivated Martial Artist podcast. Don't forget to check out our Facebook page and our Facebook group, the Motivated Martial Artist podcast.
And don't forget also the Motivated Martial Artist Instagram page.
So head along for some extra content, interviews, and much more.
So until next week, it's bye from Jackson
and Gavin,
the Motivated Martial Artists.